Hello everyone, welcome back to Parkitect, welcome back to campaign mode. And there's something a little bit different that has surprised me today. We've got another new update that the devs have been working on in Parkitect, and that is custom campaign maps. So you will be able to make your own campaign maps, to my understanding. So obviously we've got this new option up here where you can go to Taste of Adventure, which is the DLC campaigns, and we now also have community campaigns. There's nothing there saved at the moment. Obviously it's a brand new feature as of today, and if we go to find new campaigns, it takes us to the Steam Workshop, and you can see there's one by Astrotron called Realms of Adventure. So that's potentially something that we'll take a look at some point. But it's so cool that this game is continuing to get new updates at this point in time. And yeah, custom campaign maps really threw me off actually when I saw the devs YouTube video earlier today. That's not something I'd have ever expected to bring into the game, so that's really cool. And I think the campaign mode is probably my favourite way to play this game. So continuing with the original series, we have finished Silica Slopes and we're about to start on Disaster Peaks, which is obviously what today's video is about. So a disaster of an amusement park, unmaintained, unclean and unsafe. That said, the area is too good to pass up and the existing rides aren't bad once fixed. Pull this park out the gutter and turn it into a gem. So we need a park rating of 75%, a cleanliness rating of 80, 750 guests in the park, no loan debts, and then the optional goals are experience rating of 70 and by the end of January year 3. Let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, we've got this cool set of dueling coasters. Dueling steel coasters. I don't know what the problem is particularly with these, although I can immediately see there's loads of litter and trash and sick and everything like that all over the path, loads of vandalism. The park rating's really low and the park's in a bit of a dire state. I don't know if this suspended swinging coaster is in action. Seems to be. But yeah, the park needs fixing up a bit, and obviously you can see this is one of the bigger parks in the campaign playthrough. It's huge. It's going to be a lot of work obviously to get this map completed. So let's see what we're sort of looking at. We've got £15,000 or dollars rather. We can take loans out in this one, which we might have to do. Obviously the really low park rating. In terms of rides, we've got a carousel, Ferris wheel, teacups, wave swinger, thrill rides, Starshape, Tourbillon, Wipeout, and we've got free coasters. We've got the floorless steel and suspended coaster. Few transport rides, and obviously the railway, which we've got in place already, which will probably be quite handy actually for transporting guests around this large park. Shops wise, hardly anything. Might have to research that first. So we've only got 3 shops, so yeah, I think we need to put the game on pause before the park rating gets even worse, and go for shops. A little bit more on shops, and let's take a quick look at scenery as well. Good selection of scenery. We've got Candyland and Adventure, which are always good, Western, Steamworks, Medieval, Spooky, Generic, so plenty to work with there. I've got no idea what I'm going to do with this one really. I guess the first thing is just to tidy the park up and take it from there. So I'll see you all over in the first time lapse. Welcome back to the first time lapse then, and the first thing that I need to do is sort out all the paths which have been completely trashed and vandalised by the guests that are not happy with the park. So that all gets replaced all the way around the park, and you end up spending quite a bit of money replacing all these paths because you don't get any money back from the ones you delete. However, there is a reward once you get a park rating of 85 that more than covers the amount that you've spent doing that, so it's not really a problem. But it also shows you how much of a big scale this park is on, how much we're going to have to sort of cover in this build. So there are sections of the time-lapse cut out. There are sections where I really struggled as well and went bankrupt a few times. So some other ideas I had for the park in previous iterations of it do not sort of see the light of day. But the first thing that I started working on building was this entrance area, and I thought we'll just do a very sort of generic medieval style theme for this area. It's such a large park, so we're probably going to have different themed areas, and this is the first thing I could think of really that was sort of generic enough to have sort of for an entrance plaza area, and I think that works out quite nicely as well. It could be sort of a European park that uses this sort of theming around the entrance and has a fair amount of sort of money to spend on the park. So that's the idea here. Trying a few different techniques with this building, so using dormers, I believe they are, for a smaller roof section, and then just adding some basic shapes for brickwork, and then you can see that I'm mixing up the windows and doors using different ones from the medieval pieces, and then just the regular walls as well with some different colours there to give it a bit of interest and make it sort of realistic, believable theming as much as we can. So this is a shop stroke restaurant building, very straightforward really, a rectangle and a square with a tower on it and a few other details. But this sort of set the tone of how I wanted the theming for this entrance area of the park to look, so it was a good basis to get started on. Using some of the adventure roof pieces there as well, because I really like the texture of them, and I like to use them sort of as much as possible in builds. They give a really nice sort of tiled roof effect, even though it's sort of like brickwork, I guess. Next, it looks like I'm connecting some shops and stalls to the maintenance system using the underground pipes and all the usual sort of management type stuff. To be honest, the depot isn't very far from this building, but I still put the extra depot building in there, the little deliveries building in there, so that the haulers can use it and it's all kept backstage. This is something that we have to do really in the campaign maps, because guests do tend to complain about crates being hauled around the guest pathing. So that's almost this building complete. The last detail I add to it is some, I don't know what you'd call these really, are they trims or borders or something, but I make them using the text piece, using the letter X and just changing one of the fonts, and I think it looks quite cool to give a bit of variation and have a slightly different pattern than we usually have on these sort of builds. So yeah, that's that building done. I've now placed some fountains and looking at different ideas for foliage around the fountains. I couldn't really find anything that worked out there, to be honest, so I think I ended up going back to that a bit later on. And I also placed a little fountain down to the right, so I can't remember if that stays or not. I kind of don't think it does. I think I removed it because it just didn't look right there. But yeah, all the other detailing around here is fairly simple, to be honest. We've got two different types of path. We've got the brickwork path and the standard concrete path. Again, I wanted it to be a sort of believable theme park entrance, and this is the sort of stuff that they'd use. All fairly straightforward. Foliage I think looks quite nice here. I think fits in quite nicely with a medieval idea. using some oak trees and some various other trees that sit in quite nicely, and some of the brown trees there as well. Not originally brown trees, but that's how I've coloured them, and they sit in quite nicely with the area. What else am I doing then? It's hard to see sometimes when you're recording commentary over the time lapse to work out what's actually going on, because everything's run at faster speed. It's just more work really, I believe, on the plaza itself, doing some fences and some brick layers and walls and stuff like that. And really I spent far too much time decorating this area rather than focusing on the gameplay, which is probably why the park went bankrupt several times after this point. What I do when that happens is I just blueprint anything that I think works out quite well, some things that I'm happy with, and place them back into the park later on. So that's what's going to happen. Then I felt I wanted something a bit more interesting with the pathwork here, so I ended up adding a load of patterns onto the pathwork using the basic shapes in the cylinders and the new piece that we now have, and just giving them some different colours. I think that looks quite fun and something that a theme park probably would do. And I cover it over with a canopy, quite basic really, just some standard roof pieces and some glass and some borders. And then I thought we'd build an actual entrance building for the park as well, and this really is simple. I didn't go heavily detailed at all with this, and I think that's how it's going to stay as well, because it's good enough basically. And I couldn't really think what else to do with this, but it's just using the same pieces as the buildings we've got in the entrance plaza, and I feel they work out absolutely fine for this style of theme. And yeah, I'm happy enough with how it all looks. And to be honest, this is about the time when I then continued to work on the park and ended up going bankrupt. So we now move on to the time after that, when I decided I need to actually build my own coaster or this park isn't going to work out. So I chose to go with the B&M Flawless coaster. There wasn't really a lot researched at this point, so I thought that would be fine. We can make a high thrill attraction that will bring some money into the park and keep the guests happy and cover this area of the park as well. I've actually made the park a bit smaller by putting a bridge across the middle of the lake section, which probably isn't something you're supposed to do, but it worked for me, not having so much room for the guests to roam around. It just works out better for gameplay for this one. So as for the layout of the coaster, it's, I'd like to think, a fairly standard B&M Flawless coaster. It comes down the first drop and into a cobra roll, and then a bunch of other elements, including a couple of inversions. I really struggled with the second half of this layout because it was just losing too much speed and it wouldn't complete the last element that I put there, which is this 0G roll type thing. So I had to go back in and change the end of the layout a bit and give it a slightly higher mid-course brake run. The mid-course brake run also becomes a standard brake, not a block brake section, because if it does stop on there, it wasn't making the rest of the layout, which obviously isn't ideal. So I just had to improvise really, and yeah, it works out fine with the normal brakes there, and it makes the rest of the layout, and it doesn't stop at any point. So now I'm doing the theming for the coaster station and the area, and I went for a Greek mythology type theme for this build. No idea why. Nothing to do with it being in Blanco 2 or anything like that. I just thought that this would be a fairly straightforward and simple to make theme for this area. and I just wanted to have a go at playing about with the pieces, see if I could do something in this style, and it worked out reasonably well. It's very straightforward. Theming actually put this area together really quickly, nothing heavily detailed or anything, but the pieces we've got, especially the adventure pieces, work out perfectly for this. There is one sort of block piece in the building tab that works out perfectly, almost as a trim, when you look around the edge of it and sort of place it just under a roof. So I use the exact same style all over this area, put lots of these similar looking buildings in, and I think they all work out fine. It all looks cohesive together, and yeah, it's works out well with the colours as well, the colour of the coaster and everything else. So I'm pleased with how this area turned out, and it sort of sets the scene really for the rest of the park. I've also placed a flat ride in this area, a 0G I think that's called, or something like that. And again, that's helping to work towards the goals, increase guest capacity and everything like that. And it fits in quite nicely as well. It's I've always quite liked that flat ride, the way it looks. It's quite cool. Yeah, and it's just round the back of the area, to be honest, behind the coaster. So you'll go under this tunnel and it will take you to the ride, and it's also the exit for the coaster as well. Maybe not the most ideal layout, but yeah, I didn't really have anywhere else to put it. One of the problems with this map is, although it's a big map, there's actually not that much flat land to build rides on. It's perfect for coasters because you can make them sort of go over the water and stuff like that, but with flat rides there's not huge areas of flat land. A lot of the land is actually quite hilly, so yeah, struggled a bit with that. But yeah, all in all, we're getting to a good point now. The park is doing well, and in just a minute we will jump over to the live section because I'm about to meet the goals. Firstly, just polishing off a few more details, sorting out some fencing and some lighting and stuff like that. All the stuff that needs to be done. I think the foliage looks really cool as well in this area, the colours that interact well with all the rest of the buildings and everything else we've got going on. And the final thing I do is a custom fence for the flat ride. Very straightforward. So I will see you all over in the live section, and we'll see how the park's doing. And just like that, we've completed the goals. That wasn't too hard, was it? Much easier with the power of editing and cutting out all the rough bits. You can see we've got a couple more rides in the park that I didn't include in the time-lapse. There's a Ferris wheel here, a tourbillon up there which I'm going to remove. I just put it in really so we can sail over the guest count. You can see we're only just over it and dropping, so holding it for a month, yeah, I really it was quite tight. We've got a star shape over here as well, which I think is kind of a cool ride, especially by the water side here. I think that looks pretty good. And there's a teacups down here. You can see I've started my idea for a little bit of theming down here, but not taken it any further yet. So yeah, the park's like complete really. I just need to theme the rest of it up, to be honest. No idea what I'm going to do with these two coasters, but obviously we'll need a little sort of area over here, make it all look a little bit more detailed and interesting. And then obviously I've got an idea for this theming here, and then that'll be it really. That will be our 4 areas once that's all complete. So without further ado, let's jump back into a time lapse and finish the park. Welcome back to the time lapse, and the first thing that we're doing is sorting out these bridges. I thought they need a little bit of detail added to them, so they're not so plain, just paths going across the water. So I put some fences in and some borders, and called it a day really. But I think that just that little bit of detail makes them look a lot better. We do move through this time lapse quite quickly, so I'll try and keep up with it. The next thing is zoning for the staff, because this map is just too big to have the staff roam free, and there's certain areas they weren't covering, so I had to make sure that they were all zoned properly and that each zone had staff rooms and stuff like that. Moving on to the front of the park now, I'm building a very quick backstage area, just because I thought it would look kind of fun, and it'd be realistic as opposed to have a load of backstage stuff here by the deliveries and the entrance to the park. I don't do this in any other parts of the park, so it's not very consistent, but I think the fact we've got it there just sort of shows the idea that we're thinking about realism in this park. So now I'm going to work on the next themed area, and the idea I had for this was continuing the medieval theme, but we've got sort of castles that are built in the sky. So yeah, not particularly realistic, not necessarily something a park would do, but you'll see a bit later on how I sort of build the clouds in this, and I suppose it's a theme that a real park could do. I don't think I've ever seen it done before. It's sort of a fantastical idea. But really all I'm doing is making these sort of castle battlements all around the area, and using them to sort of have a break-off point between the area and the body of water, the lake, and then filling in other areas with them as well, with some bits broken off. And yeah, this was all very basic. I wanted to get this done quickly, the rest of this park, and it actually come together a lot quicker than I envisioned, just because my building techniques here were pretty quick. Nothing's heavily detailed, but it still looks pretty good. It's just basically using walls and shapes for everything, and using very similar colours. I think it all works out absolutely fine. Very straightforward to make, and then the clouds are just made from bushes, coloured white. And yeah, the clouds really sort of give it the idea that we're looking to sort of portray here with this build. I'm also putting in a food court into this area. We didn't have one before, and I thought that each themed area is going to need something, so that ends up going in there. Very, very basic roof and wall structure around it, or building rather. And then I work on the foliage, so we're just chucking in a few of the trees that I thought fitted well with the sort of medieval theme idea, and using some of the blobbly trees as well. I like them, they look good anywhere, to be honest. I've always been a fan of them. And yeah, this area's obviously come together really quickly, putting a cover over the train station here. We actually only have 2 train stations in the park now, because I've gone and deleted one, because that area is not in use anymore. So it'd be quite a long train ride around the park, but I think that's fine. And then the final thing I work on for this area is the station for the coaster, which I'd say I'm not entirely happy with, to be honest. It's probably my least favourite building in this park, but it's right over the back. You know, it's not in a prominent position, and it serves a purpose, so yeah, it's done now, it's fine. It's I just really didn't know what to do, to be honest, because I wanted to fit it with the castle in the sky theme, and the idea of, you know, this is a suspended coaster, so you're flying over everything. So I wanted some sort of idea that it could be like a hangar type building, but a medieval hangar. Not that that would really exist. So yeah, that's what I ended up with. Moving on to the final area of the park, and I started work straight away on the station for the dueling coasters, and with this I decided to put a little bit more effort into the build and do things a little bit more detailed, because the other 2 areas I've thrown together really quickly. So I just thought we would have a more standout building with a bit higher detail on that took a little bit more time and care. This building alone probably took me 2 hours, and then the rest of the area is pretty rushed as well, like the rest of the park. But I wouldn't say rushed necessarily, but I've been building a lot quicker in this build. I guess it's just the place where we're at the moment in the campaign series. So after this map, I believe I've got 3 left, and yeah, starting to see the end of the original campaign series, which yeah, I'm sort of surprised that I'm at that point now. But I just wanted to get on with things really, so that's probably why. And the size of this park is quite an overwhelming park to work on. If you're going in with really tiny details in every corner of the park, it's going to take you years to finish. So yeah, work harder, not smarter, I guess. No, work smarter, not harder. It's the other way around. So yeah, the idea for this building is just from reference images. I wanted another sort of another age in history, I guess, but I'm not entirely sure what age this is because it's just AI concept art. Might be based on a real building, I'm not sure, but I think it looks kind of cool. And yeah, the pieces for this were fairly straightforward. Just use the pillars, layering up several different pillars to get a more detailed effect, and then using basic shapes with the brick wall to create the actual building work itself, and then some simple windows. And yeah, I think it's just the smaller details that make this one a little bit more intricate, a little bit more interesting rather, those intricate details. So really it was just a case of building one half of this building and then duplicating it across, with a little golden dome on the top as well. I feel like this gives it almost sort of like an Arabian type feel maybe, which wasn't really the intention. This isn't supposed to be a replica of any specific architecture, it's just taking some ideas I saw on an AI reference image really and do my own sort of thing with it. And yeah, this is what we come out with. So that's it really. Once this bit's been made, the rest of the building comes together a lot quicker because, like I say, it's just a case of duplicating it and then covering in the middle roof section, which you're not really going to see. You can see now that I've blueprinted it and copying it across to the other side. Obviously, because this is a dueling coaster and the stations aren't right next to each other, there's quite a space to actually fill in when you're doing a building like this. So I do whack a massive dome on the top in the middle of the building, which was always the intention, just to break up the really boxy feel that it would otherwise have. I also put a couple of dormer type sections on the front and back to again break up the rectangle box shape. I don't know if dormer is actually the right term for these, but it's something like that. So here we go then with the dome to finish off this building, copying the little ones like for like, just in a bigger scale. And I think it looks fairly nice. Not too different sort of stuff that I've done before in the game, but yeah, it works out fine. And then once this building is finished, I quickly wrap up the area and wrap up the park, so hence the not so long time lapse for this second part of the build, because it really didn't take me too long to finish all this, which is great. Because the coaster station is sort of the fanciest building in the park, I didn't want to copy that style across for all the other buildings in this area, so I just did something a bit more plain, still with some nice little details on, but using more subtle colours and none of the gold and stuff like that, just so that the station building is a bit more of a prominent feature, I suppose, in comparison to the other buildings. And we really do only have the other two buildings here, a shop, restaurant and a bathroom. And we're rather quickly coming towards the end of the time lapse. This was quite a challenging park, just because of the size that you've got to work with. But once I met the goals, everything worked out really nicely and came together really well, I think. So I'll see you over in the final park tour. Welcome to the completed Disaster Peaks, which turned out to not be a disaster in the end. You can see we're in the medieval entrance area of the park, and the park's running quite nicely, making about £1,000 a month in profit. Not a huge amount, but enough to keep running and to expand if we ever wanted to. And we've got around 770 guests at the moment, which seems to be pretty steady as well, with a high park rating. So our entrance area then is obviously this medieval style theming, with a wipeout ride. That's the only ride in this area. I'll show you a quick look around. I didn't do a huge detail on the back of the buildings where you can't see them, so really this looks best from one angle, but it's still adequate from every angle you look at. And then over here we've got our backstage area leading to the deliveries. If I had more space and was able to, I would have tried to put a road leading out, something like that. But this is sort of an idea that this would be a parking area and where the deliveries come in and stuff like that. In reality, you'd probably need a much bigger area, but that's all we had to work with, so that's fine. And here's our little entrance canopy, I guess you'd call it, cover as you come into the park. I think that looks really fun and something a bit different as well. So next we move across the water and we come to our mythology area, which has got 3 rides in it. We've got the G-Lock, the floorless coaster and the Ferris wheel. We'll take a little bit more look in detail at how this area turned out. You can see the coaster going around there. So using the same style of buildings pretty much everywhere in the area, and I think the repetition works for this area quite well. I don't like to always do that, I don't usually like to do that, I like a bit more variation, but I think with this style of theming that works out quite well. And yeah, it came together really quickly, this area. Here's the Ferris wheel with the little viewing point on the lakeside, which I think is a nice addition. Yeah, all in all, I'm happy with this composition. Got the colour of the Ferris wheel copying over onto these awnings as well, which I think is a nice touch. So without further ado, let's take a ride on the coaster. Here's a look at the stats for anyone that wants to see them. And we will wait for a train to depart the station. Hopefully any minute now. So slightly curved drop into the lift hill, which is rather slow, but it's speeded up. And then our first drop goes straight into this cobra roll, which I think the pace on that is just about right. And then we come round into a curve, into a downwards helix, into a dive loop, I believe this is, which goes into a little trough section, and then round into the brake run. No block brakes on that one because it was killing the rest of the layout. Drops down into the lake, then into a large helix, and then round into the final element, which is this 0G roll. Back round, another helix into the very short brake run, which it just about makes into the station. We lost a lot of momentum on the second half of that ride, which was frustrating because no matter how high I built the brake run, we still seemed to lose that momentum, but never mind. Let's move on to the next area of the park. So this is our final area that we built, and I don't really have a name for what this is supposed to be. It's just a mismatch, I guess, of kind of posh looking architecture Yeah, just getting a bit creative with the styles really. We've got a star-shaped ride here, which is kind of fun. You might have seen that just at the end of the time lapse where I worked on the canopy, which is very, very basic. And then down here is the main area. So we've got our restaurant building, our toilet block, and our coaster, and that's it really for this area. Obviously, a dueling coaster is a big attraction, so I think it's quite reasonable for it to take up all this space in the area. I know I didn't build it, but we're still going to have a ride on one of these. I'm going to have to wait for it to come back round because it's there's only one train running on these things. So okay, I have fixed that now. There is now 2 trains running on it. I didn't realise that it was just set to have poor operations due to how this campaign map is, with everything broken at the start. So I ended up, I've made the scenario harder for myself by not fixing that at the start. Didn't even realise, but yeah, the operation should be better now and the throughput should be better, meaning that we can continue to make money even though I've finished with this park. So yeah, these coasters are really cool. The dueling elements on them is fantastic. The way they interlock, and you've got different inversions sort of going over other elements of the ride. Really good interaction, and yeah, just I love seeing dueling coasters in this game. I think they look really cool when they're set to arrive back at the station at almost the same time. Really cool. And there's another look at our building, and let's take a look at the final area of the park. Here is our final themed area then, which is this sky castle or fortress. Really happy with how this turned out. The clouds, I think, really adds to the design of the whole thing, and just the colours here seem to work really well. The sort of bland greys and browns with this sort of lime green or aqua turquoisey sort of coaster track colour. I think that's a really good composition. Really pleased with that. We will take a ride on the coaster in just a sec. Just want to look at the area in a bit more detail. So we've got our restaurant building here, very straightforward there. The teacups slightly raised up, and I think that sits in there really, really well, with a bit of foliage around it. And I think everything in this area just seemed to fall into place, to be honest. And it's probably the quickest area to put together as well, so I'm quite pleased with how that turned out. And we go up the stairs, and we've got the station for the train, which I like. I think it's quite quaint and quite fun having the bridge, well, the train on the bridge going over the path here. And then this building, which I'm not really happy with, but it's fine. So let's take a ride on Hurricane. Again, even though I didn't build it, but the time lapses weren't too long in this video, so we've got time to do these POVs, and I think it would be a shame not to, given that they're all themed up now. So here we go. This is this a Vekoma coaster? I think it's Vekoma that made these, isn't it? It's a suspended swinging coaster. It's a bit like Ninja at Six Flags Magic Mountain, where the cars swing to the left and right, and that makes it a lot more intense than it would otherwise be. And I think it's a really fun design. It's a shame you don't see that many of these around anymore. But yeah, it's got some really good interaction here with the castle. Obviously it goes through that little tunnel, goes around all the battlements before returning back to the station. I did improve the operations on this because that was only running on one train, so I stuck a block brake in it, and now we've got 2 train ops on this one. So yeah, much better. Okay, that's Hurricane. Here is the park in all its glory then. This is as far zoomed out as you can get, which just shows how big this park really is. And it is difficult to actually showcase it in this way because it looks like it's 4 different mini parks that are sort of separated by bits of path. I did try and tie everything in together the best I could, but there are just some sections where it's plain path with benches and nothing else. I think that's fine, and I think you get that in real parks. It's not just 100% theming everywhere. You know, you have some emptier spaces between the theme lands, and yeah, pleased with how this one turned out. Let's have a quick look at night time. That's how it looks at night. Nothing special really, just lighting as and where is needed. Could have done with a bit more lighting on these bridges actually, but let's just pretend that we haven't seen that and turn it back to daytime. And yeah, I'm going to leave it here because I want it to load up like this when I save it. And then we're going to go back into the map and see what we've got next. Okay, so that's Disaster Peaks finished. Still need to get the other gold coin, but that leaves 2 maps that we could look at next, so either Robo Park or Sheer Cliffs. I think I'm going to do Robo Park next. I believe there's just these 2 and then the one more map over here, and I think there might be a bonus map maybe that Astrotron did beyond that, but yeah, let's get through these ones first and see where we're at. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.